2007, I did a smaller installation. It was just 2 bottles of water. The first bottle shows or contains the water from the upper stream of the Yangtze River. And of course, it was pure and transparent and crystal-like. And then the second bottle is water of the lower stream of the Yangtze River, and it was completely green. You could see the color going from pure, transparent, beautiful, to green, almost like perfume bottle. There was a poem. It says, 我住长江头，君住长江尾，日日思君不见君，共饮长江水. You long to see this person, but also you love this water. So the reference in that installation is the entire water system containing the love of all human race. But it's gone. It's not the same water anymore. The whole point of that poem is that we share the same water, we have the same moonlight, but we don't have the same water anymore. It's not about just ecology or the beauty or the clean and protected nature. It's not that. It's the human anxiety of our own existence. How can you exist in such variation? That project in 2007 was about Yangtze River. So it was the river that took me to Chongqing. On the same project, in the same year, I did a long film which documented the riverbank of the entire distance from Chongqing to Shanghai. That's why I was in Sichuan. That's where I began my journey. There was no earthquake back then. I didn't anticipate the earthquake, and nobody could. I was just working there. So another project entitled The Earth Was Growing Dark Hair Overnight took place in Chongqing. That was April. So each month I published a major project. Sometimes it was on abandoned house. So the project in Chongqing, in Jiulongpo, was on the abandoned house. So no, I didn't go to the earthquake site. The earthquake came to me. One of the projects called Raising the River for 5 meters was an actual context. The set of the bridge was an abandoned suburb of Beijing. Each time a bridge was built, the river lowered 1 meter on average. So if you observe the foundation of that bridge, you can see the watermark comes down, and now there's no water. So in that installation, what I did was that for a whole month I painted the foundation of the bridge with water so that you can see it's like crying. The bridge is crying. You can see the water going up. The reason for choosing painting was later I realized that we needed a sort of allusion to historical and literary references. Earthquake is the making of ruins. One way to look at it is destruction, but it's also a construct. It constructed the poetics of ruins. All of this was deeply, deeply embedded in the memory of Chinese literary traditions. Song-dynasty painting was the moment, I think, such poetics of poetry and painting came together. On the one hand, you can see the beautiful nature going through destruction, turning into a different kind of poetics. On the other hand, you can see the river flowing through it, washing away while containing all the memory. So if you experience that, painting seems to be a natural choice. For one thing, is this long, beautiful hand scroll format that could carry this. And then that medium on silk, it's very easy to carry, it's resilient, it's transparent, it is just very physical. Silk responds to body in a much different way than paper, than canvas, I would say. So on the one hand, it has a long tradition, and on the other hand, it combines painting and literature. And finally, physically, it's intimate to me. I could carry that for 4 years, going around China, having no problem. So the project took a 4-year journey. And in the end, the silk was falling into pieces. But I could still retain its delicacy. So these conditions came together. It just became something very natural. This painting has 8 parts. Basically, it began from the explosion, and it goes into all the homeless spirits and fairies and strange creatures and fantastic forms, human forms, biological forms. And then it goes into all kinds of buildings and experiences. And then you recognize all of a sudden there's this gigantic mountain. It's actually a tree. In the tree, you could see pockets and caves of experiences and events. And then after that, you see this huge mountain that has ghost-like faces. And then we encounter the Wanrenkeng. 10,000 people were buried in one pit, and this pit is blossoming into a gigantic flower, and 2 of them. And then after that, we see, after the earthquake, the broken walls, destructed architecture, reclaimed by nature. You see flowers growing into it and through it. You see finally the walls melt and the plants are turning into fireworks. In the final moment, an entire mountain took off, just flew away through the painting. So this narrative is compositional, it's visual, it's conceptual, it's not structural in terms of storytelling. You can read it as storytelling, but it's really purely allegorical because it's visually driven. The title is Rebirth, or it's because, that's the reason. In English, it sounds like the end of the world. And to me, they're the same thing. On the species level, destruction is natural movement. We consider safe, secure, stable. To the bugs, may not be. They probably love the earthquake because it could clean out all the difficulties they have. So the human stance that we love to take is not only questionable, but also it's never the center of the world. What we consider destruction or problematic truths of nature, perhaps is the festivity of it. What we consider death, like winter, perhaps is the most natural cycle of it. There are a lot of political problems with this earthquake, which have been examined by many artists. It can be perceived as a human struggle, right? So one position controlled by human, the other position controlled by the anti-human, namely people who don't respect humanity. We have the human, the victim, the children. We have the government, people who steal money. But to me, it's never that simple. I mean, that's a much simplified version of the world. That's one way to look at this. But the truth is, in this entire process, disasters have been happening in that area for all ages. Is the solution in our own hands? Or is it that we should just put ourselves in a more passive place and say, oh, government is not doing the right job? No, humans should not be doing their job. We should be aware of what we are doing. The fact that we always assume that we could control our fate or our destiny in those terms is not natural. Nothing can be controlled. No destiny could be controlled like that. So currently, I'm making a real-time, real space movie in a real design project. So in this film, I'm staging all the insects and humans in a small courtyard, which is set on the room. And this courtyard is going to be demolished. I'm designing it with an architect. We're going to turn this courtyard into another white architecture. So as the destruction is happening, my filming was taken place. So when you enter the courtyard, you could see two groups of people working at the same time. One is art directors setting up the scene. The other is the architects getting ready to measure the site, getting ready to demolish that. So in this film, you can see nature, namely the bugs, the vines growing into it, the bamboo, but you could also see the people living in that. And you can see the building up of the film in art directorship. You can also see destruction, demolition being planned. It's this kind of logic and system that drives all my project. It is not the medium. It's a very closed up, controlled context. In that field, you can see how nature as a system functions in a much more asserted, dramatized fashion.